because I think that we are really, really, you know, psychoanalysis is very horrible on the maternal and on the feminine. I mean, it's a big scandal. That's my next feminist revolution. Next year I will explain to you what I did with the maternal. It's nothing what I told you. It's just the beginning. But so we have many, many problems but this is a practice. I mean, you work with people, so you need, you know. So this, I took my responsibility and I started to write theoretically against my wish. And then I got my Ph.D. on the writing already published in academic journals and then invited to teach and so on. But the source for me is this intuition that evolves in my notebooks, and therefore I don't quarrel with them. If the word appears witnessing, I don't quarrel with the words, I just use it. And whoever can profit from it, profit from it. And if you cannot use it, forget it. That's how it works.
Heidegger called not use, but usage.
Usage.
That's a much better word, because Finskes.
How would you say the sentence?
Yeah, no, it's the same. It's not, the use sounds so instrumental.
Yeah.
You are not really using
no.
it, sondern you are following. Nicht?
Yeah.
That is a certain way of Achtsamkeit,
yeah.
of attention to it.
Yeah, it's true.
That is, I think it's usage.
It's kind of meditating on it and say, what the hell did you want last night when you wrote this? And, you know, all these concepts, the grains, the strings, the threads, all this that I'm using is coming out of my work with the painting. What goes on here, this grain resisting me, I take a note, it resists me, and then the day after I ask myself, or a year after, what did you mean by the grain resisting, you know? And that's, I think for me, the creative space is art, and also the work with my patients, which is very creative, I think.
Anthony is a sayer of theory.
Given all you've said, I wonder how you do or how you imagine an analyst providing a secure frame or the ground rules of therapy in order to avoid or eliminate these anxieties and abandonment issues that can come up in a therapy or in the opposite direction too. Well,
for me it is so, the whole modus of being an analyst is so much already containing these anxieties and so on that I would really need an example of what you mean or what would be the fear you're expressing. And
well, for example, some contemporary theorists think that having their practice in the house is particularly seductive. In their own home. Having their practice in their own home is seductive to the patient and leads to seductions of the analyst on the unconscious level. So they would recommend establishing a series of ground rules to avoid those kinds of seductions. That would have to do with establishing a fee, establishing a fixed time of meeting, all sorts of security things that try to work with these ideas of feelings of abandonment that might arise in the course of a therapy, or feelings of anxiety that are evoked just in terms of different seductions that come up, having to do with how they pay for their therapy, how they might meet another patient in the waiting room, all of these things. So given your theory, I wonder if there's something specific you could say about how that applies to these issues.
Yeah, because now, thank you, because you're making it more specific. In fact, you're talking about whether I would employ a different setting. Because what you describe is the borderlines of the setting. And there is a lot of reassurance in the setting, not only in that what you describe, but also because it's a contract that both patient and analyst respect. Now, I don't think it matters so much what are the rules. Of course, you don't do rules that are seductive, and you don't do rules that are abusive and so on. But it doesn't matter what is the contract. It matters that both respect it. So I think that there's no use to fetishize certain way of working because, okay, 50-minute hour. This is one of the, okay, why 50-minute hour? Because Freud had to add another patient during the day. So he said if each patient will have 50 minutes, I will have one more patient in 8 hours, you know. So this is as accidental as that. So the condition for analysis could be very, very wide, as long as both of you decide the frame and respect it. And then we know what happens when, if anybody transgresses the frame, you see? But you could be a bird on a tree, you know, and your patient sitting on another tree. As long as this is the condition, then we know when we also left that condition. But when I talk about all this transmissive and transitivity and all that, it doesn't mean we have to touch. It doesn't mean you have to employ any kind of seduction, not at all. It's about the awareness. It's the part of the responsibility of the analyst has to grow here. The patient doesn't need anything special. If you're referring or you're trying to refer to all the experimental things of Lang or Ferenczi or even Winnicott, sometimes these failed. For various reasons we can discuss. It failed. So the framing would be flexible only to the extent that we decide what it is, and then it remains more or less that framing that we choose. I also avoid, I talked about this with my class today, I don't think that, I think that the classical analysis 5 times a week and so on has more dangers than advantages. And I'm against it.
As I heard from my students, and Felix Guattari was not really in rules, respecting.
No, Felix was something.
Was one of his.
No, he was not seducing everybody. He seduced the one who became his wife. That's different. I mean, no, I don't know about the. No, I know about the 2 at least, but that was not the question. This was, as Lacan said, you have to allow me the things that I do extraordinary, you know, but don't make a rule out of it. Okay, so but what Felix wanted as a method was that there would be a real production. He wanted analysis to turn productive. But don't forget that he was working in Laborde. He was working in a hospital. People had to be taken care of every day, 24 hours a day, and so on and so on. It was not the conditions of a patient coming to your house every day, etc. But he, for example, refused the notion of resistance. I agree with him. He said, what is all this bullshit? You know, if the analysis doesn't work, just move to another analyst, you know. If there's no production, if there is all this animosity and something is not working. So, but this is another story. It's very interesting to think about.
Within a therapy taking place within the concept of matrixial border space, how would you describe the timing and the process of the end of the analytic relationship? And also, how do you find, or do you find your patients relating to your art, discussing that with you or afterwards, after the analytic relationship?
I would not make rules, but I can tell you that this is very interesting. I had a long period where I worked in my studio, and some patients didn't even hardly see it, you know? It's not about you work at your home, it looks like that. You work in a clinic, it looked like that, you know? For some people, they just didn't care less. They didn't realize they come to an atelier of an artist, which is enormous. And other patients were attaching all kind of strings to that. And